the Egyptians understood that the divine expressed itself in metaphor and likeness. They didn't see likeness as an accident or as a coincidence. They saw likeness as something intentional. That there was something it was gesturing toward that was not like a fixed thing, like this is nuclear waste or this is special, but a kind of like a symbol like the Enneagram that just unfolds in meaning and meaning and meaning and meaning. It has an enormous amount to teach us about inner life and about our human role in a larger cosmic ecosystem.
The big hormone Enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres, 4-5 wing, 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9-1, 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
We're going to do Egypt.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
What is the cheapest you could make an Egypt retreat?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. I would guess, around 3,000.
Damn.
Yeah. I didn't have to pay for it because I was helping, but
$8,000.
and I'm supposed to get paid, I think. But that was like 7,500.
Egypt is one of those touchstone, really big trips. So if someone is trying to do Egypt, you're expecting to pay a pretty good chunk of money. But
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean it's ridiculously expensive and it doesn't need to be so expensive. And I think that
it's like 4 seasons and shit, right?
Yeah, like we stayed at the Four Seasons.
I had like 5-star hotel.
Yeah, like there's no reason to do that.
So like if we were to plan like a zone and we just got an Airbnb and you led a tour, like how much would the Airbnb cost?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And how long would the trip? I mean, what do you envision as far as like if you did the full shittery that you want to show everyone? Is it 10 days or what?
It'd be about 10 days because the one I just got off on was 21 days or 22 days actually.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my third time doing it, so it was really good to see like what I would change and what worked and what didn't. And for me, you need to do Cairo stuff like Memphis and the pyramids and stuff. That represents what's called Old Kingdom Egypt, the oldest kind of pharaonic time. And then you need to go to Luxor because it's beautiful. It's insanely abundant. And there's a lot of stuff there that's like very conducive to like real understanding and real teaching and things like this. And if you're in Luxor, you need to, like my trip would be like, all right, we go to Luxor for a few days and there's a couple of sites. And then you take a bus to a place called Abydos. And then from there, Dendara. And so those are kind of like 2 places that are in bus distance of Luxor. And then the final thing I would do is fly back up to Cairo and have a final day where we go meditate in the pyramid. So that would be between 10 and 12 days, depending on how it go. And now if we were to do like a zone kind of thing, like just us, and do some Egyptian shit at the same time, like I think could probably range that for pretty cheap. If like a few of us did like our own little trip, I could probably get it pretty cheap and still get access to a lot of amazing things. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm into and would be most interesting to us, like, is not common tourist stuff.
Right. When y'all came to Chicago, I'm not fucking taking you to tourist places. I'm taking you to like actual interesting spots that don't cost that much.
Right.
So if you know your way around Egypt, I would imagine that you could do like a rogue trip that's catering to normal people who can afford it.
Welcome back, everybody, to Big Hormone Enneagram. I am your pharaoh, Himbos the 4, and I am back from the land of Egypt. We're going to do an Egypt episode. I know that we've been alluding to my deep obsession for this entire podcast, and I haven't really gotten into it. So I'm excited. I just got back from co-leading a 3-week-long trip with Russ Hudson through Egypt, looking at symbolist Egypt. But before we get into that, we got some plugs. So please buy my book, Instinctual Drives and the Enneagram, and buy David's Trifix book guide on enneagrammer.com or anyasite.com. And what else we got, Emeka?
Let's see. We got Dark Arts Academy, $19 a month. We at enneagrammer.com, I think we recently did a class on Zendaya from the TV show Euphoria. She was an interesting typing. I think before that we did Timothy. How do you say that last name?
Chalamet.
Yeah, we did him. So yeah, $19 a month. And just a real quick comment on, I've already mentioned that we surpassed our goal with the money that we were raising for audio equipment. Thank you to everyone who's been sending in money. All of that money is going towards all the improvements that we need, drugs and all the improvements that we need to make for the pod. Besides the equipment, bighormone.com's coming soon. And we're recording a video podcast at Nancy's wedding in April. So just getting ready for that. So thank you to everyone who's helping us make this podcast the greatest. As if it wasn't already the greatest, but just making it even better.
The super greatest.
Yes.
And also as incentive to join Dark Arts Academy, if you join up soon and watch the latest clip, you can see me be absolutely wrong about Zendaya and make a total fool of myself. So that would be good to tune into that.
You can tune in to watch Davis decline.
Decline in my old age. Yeah.
Really need to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really annoying about Egypt, and so I've been wanting to not just blast all over the place about it.
The first question that I would have is, why should we give a fuck about Egypt?
Yeah, like plug it into the Enneagram kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, all right, yeah, that's a great question, and that's the question.
Right.
So I think first thing I want to say on the outset is, like I said, I co-led a trip with Russ, and it's my second time leading with him.
Mm-hmm.
I originally was like, our friend Denise was gonna lead with him, and she had some kind of private something or other. She couldn't make it, so I filled in last minute. And so before the COVID, Denise and I we're planning on doing a cheaper trip than the one that I just led with Russ. The one that I led with Russ is 3 weeks. You go on a boat down the Nile, see all kinds of shit. It's very full and a long trip. So it'd be very hard for us normal folks to take off work and afford all this. And so I wanted to make it available to younger people and things, and people that can't take 3 weeks off of their life. So COVID started, and I didn't have this podcast, and I didn't have my book out, so I was like a little bit more of a nobody than even than I am now. And so
now you're a big somebody.
Now I'm a big, huge somebody. So I'm putting this out there at the onset of the episode just to say, like, I'm thinking about leading my own trips, and I have a tour company in Egypt that I'm close with. And for people that are interested, it would be a couple thousand, because it's a whole thing, but it'd be life-changing, and it'd be really powerful and be more like a retreat rather than a trip. Inner work retreat. So I'm going to question of why should we give a fuck about Egypt? So in terms of its just relationship to the Enneagram, I think the Enneagram, or early precursor of the Enneagram, comes from Egypt. The origins of not only the Enneagram, but also the whole Western spiritual tradition. Nearly everything that we take, be Christian, Jewish, Islamic, it all has its origins in ancient Egypt, as well as like the philosophy and metaphysics of ancient Greece. The Greeks were very, very generous in attributing their wealth of knowledge and philosophy and sense of architecture and even their gods to the Egyptians. And a lot of what we understand about Egypt today, the conventional wisdom, is just plain wrong. Based in speculation, or a lot of it is trying to diminish the value of Egypt, because what a thing it would be if our culture recognized that the origins of our civilization come from Africa and not from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of there still is, but there, especially in the early parts of Egyptology, a lot of just racism and projection of egoism. So I got interested in Egypt because I got interested in the Enneagram. Gurdjieff, who's the guy who introduced the Enneagram to the world through not as a personality system, but as a process description. Gurdjieff, he was looking for a source of real wisdom, real understanding in the world. Like he saw a lot of crazy shit growing up along the Silk Road, and he went in search of sources of real wisdom in the ancient world, or that stemmed from the ancient world. And his travels led him to Egypt. And so, from the point of view of just the history of the Enneagram, Egypt plays a big role in the sense of shaping Gurdjieff's understanding and his trajectory and his teachings. But moreover, Egypt is significant in the context of the Enneagram because Egypt, contrary to the popular view, was a civilization that viewed itself as a living instrument for creating a relationship between mundane earthly events of human life and cosmic order. They represented cosmic order as the goddess Mot, and so the civilization, the daily actions, the calendar, everything they did was ritualized, and it was seen as a reflection of a higher ontological order, a higher level of spiritual realities, a higher realm of divine action, sort of reflecting itself in every facet of mundane life. And so, Egypt produced some of the most exquisite art and architecture and things that if we just had the eyes to take a second look at them beyond what we've been told in school about what these things were and what these people represented, if we were able to just take fresh eyes and look at like, what the fuck is the pyramid? What the fuck is all this art about? How did they maintain a civilization, very, very consistent civilization for 3,000 years at least? And what were they doing? What was valuable to them? It has an enormous amount to teach us about inner life and about our human role in a larger cosmic ecosystem. And for me personally, what Egypt represents, from this point of view of seeing Egypt as a civilization that took inner life deadly seriously, it is a kind of a food for me a food for my, in the Gurdjieff work, we call a wish for our wish to do the work, to be inspired, to want to make all those efforts to meditate and to stay present in our three centers and to, put into practice the wisdom that we learned through understanding our personality type. It is deeply and powerfully evocative, in every dimension, visually, artistically, the architecture that they created. It's this sense of these are a people that took inner life as the absolute most important thing. And they devoted so much time and especially attention and cultivated attention into creating these things. It's not just like, oh, they had a really complicated and very interesting philosophy that, it's very, abstract that we can speculate on and be inspired by. It's like they left physical objects and monuments that speak to and require to have built a certain quality of attention that is incredibly rare for us today, and a kind of attention that had to be shared among many people to coordinate something like building a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Does all this make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's deeply inspiring, but it also like it works on so many levels where it's like working with the three centers in a way, going through Egypt, because you need to be very present to what you're experiencing in order to really appreciate it. And what I mean by that is, we all hear that ancient Egyptians were death obsessed, simple farmer people that were very superstitious and thought that there were beings with like hawk heads and crocodile faces and things like this, and that they worshipped an egotistical pharaoh who just left monuments to his own vanity. And when you're actually looking at their art, when you're actually looking at you're actually inside a pyramid, you're seeing like, this is not just egoism. This is not just something that was born out of superstition. That they had a different way of thinking and understanding things, but it was a highly sophisticated, could say like science or modality of understanding what affected consciousness, like how specific architecture affects consciousness, how certain metaphors and symbols affect consciousness, and how all those things work together to kind of push the mind's eye into seeing in the most mundane events like the sun rising and setting, to see a kind of divine operation in it and not take it for granted because you were seeing the unfolding of the divine order. If that makes sense.
Is there a way to convey, John, just that sense of the experience of the actual resonance of that whole symbolic landscape and just all of those modalities, as like you can really sense into what all of these beliefs are, as opposed to just sort of seeming like a bunch of kind of magical, mystical beliefs, but the actual experience of it? Is there a way to relay that as an experience to some degree?
Yeah, let me see if I can, and you can tell me if I'm hitting it or not. But
Yeah.
the way I'll kind of preface it is to talk a little bit about the perspective that like Russ and I are taking when we go to Egypt, because the trip that we just did is based on trips that sort of an independent Egyptologist and author named John Anthony West started doing like years ago. And John West was a fucking character. I think he was a self-pres sexual 6 with a 5 wing who just like fucking loved to argue. And he used to be like fucking 80 years old. He passed away a couple years ago, but he'd be on the Giza Plateau and he's got all these people like 20, 30, 40 years younger than him. And he's just like hauling ass and he's swigging, little vial of vodka out of his, out of his, like his pouches, like all over the Giza Plateau, and nobody can keep up with him.
Yeah, there's a really good interview with him on Joe Rogan, by the way, that's worth listening to.
Oh yeah,
where you get a real sense of what kind of character he is.
Huge fucking character, and just like such a great person. And my first trip was with John West, and such a lovable figure. But and I really recommend John's books, Serpent in the Sky, and if you can find it, The Traveler's Key to Ancient Egypt. That one especially, it's out of print, but it is so good. But John had these trips because he studied the work of a French mathematician named Schwaller de Lubitz, who spent like 15 years living in Luxor and studying this temple called the Temple of Luxor, or the Temple of Man. It's in the shape of a human body, and it represents sort of the mystical or esoteric dimensions of the human body. Coming from a context where people saw Egyptians as just superstitious, builders, kind of just obsessed with death, this guy used mathematics and measurement to sort of start studying the temple. Like he started because he noticed that there were 3 different axes in the temple, and he's like, oh, that's very strange. What does this mean? And just from measurement alone, he was getting, pi and phi, these kind of numbers that supposedly the Egyptians shouldn't have known. And over time, he started to recognize that the mathematics of the temple and the construction was metaphorical of spiritual principles. And, this is the same thing we find in the Enneagram with the octave. The octave and the relationship between the law of 3 and the law of 7, it's if you divide 1 by 7, you get 0.1428571. The idea is that if you divide the whole, the 1, into 7, 7 being the number of process, which is an Egyptians recognize 7 as the number of process. It turns into this sequence, and so there's a math that is a metaphor, and that's rampant throughout Egypt. And so John West started these trips where he's basically proving a lot of what Schwaller de Lubitz was arguing for. And, this perspective that is trying to understand Egyptians on Egyptians' terms rather than going by the academic bullshit, they call it symbolist Egypt. And it's engaging with the symbolism of the ancient Egyptians on their terms as much as modern people can. And John West is famous because he was studying Schwaller de Lubitz. De Lubitz mentioned the Sphinx, And if you've ever seen the Sphinx is not built on the Giza Plateau. It is carved out of the bedrock, meaning, yeah, it was just like there was like a lump on the Giza Plateau, and then they just carved around it. And they took those blocks and made a temple in front of it and carved the Sphinx. And in the enclosure of the Sphinx, the walls of the Sphinx enclosure are the same age as the Sphinx because, they quarried these things out at the same time. And Schwaller noted that the weathering patterns of the Sphinx enclosure, the rock around the Sphinx, showed erosion patterns of torrential rain. And that's pretty weird on the Giza Plateau when there's fucking Sahara Desert. And even in the time of the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx would often get covered up to its neck in sand, even as far back as what's called the New Kingdom, like 3,000 years ago. So torrential rains, that's pretty weird. And, you can tell what sand weathering is, and you can tell what other kinds of weathering from the Nile rising. But these are rain patterns. And so John West hired Robert Schoch, a Boston University professor and geologist, to come to Giza and just to look at the erosional patterns and date the Sphinx based not on how it should fit into the chronology, based on just geology. And Schoch estimated that the Sphinx must be at least 7,000, from 7,000 BC or older, instead of the 2,500 BC. So basically, John redated the Sphinx, and this at first sounded really crazy, but now we're finding stuff in Turkey, for example, called Göbekli Tepe, which starts at 9,500 BC. So human civilization is much older. All this is to say that part of understanding ancient Egypt through this lens is looking at how the Egyptians understood that the divine expressed itself in metaphor and similarity and likeness. They didn't see likeness as an accident or as a coincidence. They saw likeness as something intentional. So, for example, the primal archetype of ancient Egypt was the movement of the sun through the day and the night. And everything was based on this. So this day and the night as also the sun's journey through the year. The movement of the sun could be seen as a metaphor for the soul, for inner transformation. And there were different levels in which the sun's journey was representing different aspects of divine order. So to give you a more specific example, there's this famous story of the god Osiris, who's the god of transformation. When the Nile would flood, it would sort of revivify the farmland of Egypt. He represented that greening, that resurrection of the land, that things turning into life. Osiris was a king in the first time in this myth, and he's got his wife Isis, and they're all doing pretty good. And his brother, envious brother Set, Set is the prototype for Satan. Set gets envious, and he's like, "Hey, Osiris, you're popular king, and we're all celebrating you. I made you this golden coffin. Come on in." And Osiris is like, "Cool." So he gets in the coffin. Set closes the door, and it's a whole thing. But he chops him up into pieces and scatters his body. Isis is very upset, understandably, and she goes on a quest to assemble the 14 pieces of Osiris's body. And Osiris's phallus has been eaten by fish, so she has to make a phallus out of magic. And by doing so, it's the immaculate conception of their son Horus. And Horus ends up avenging and fighting off Set. And there's this whole law of three thing that I'll get to later about Horus, Set, and Isis. That story is the same story that shows up in The Lion King, with Mufasa getting, killed by Scar and being avenged by Simba.
Mm-hmm.
It's what Hamlet is based on. It's a very primal archetypal story that also the Christ story is based on. And what it means is, it can mean a lot of things, but one of the meanings is Osiris represents the human soul, and Set represents the instinctual drives. And when we get into a body, as in we go into the coffin, the essential integrity of our soul gets ripped apart. We become, in the term, and the way Gurdjieff would speak of it, as many eyes, many selves. And so Set rips us apart. And Isis, she represents self-remembering. And she's remembering and being present with all these different pieces of Osiris's body, all pieces of the soul. pieces of our inner life. And by her kind of actively receptive presence, brings it back together. And the whole thing about her, creating this phallus of light, that means that the spiritual potency is in the hands of this feminine, actively receptive consciousness. When we're self-remembering, we're able to give birth to Horus, which is kind of like a Christ-like divine in the world. And it takes his proper place with Set, meaning he doesn't kill Set, but he subdues Set. And there's this powerful image of Horus standing on top of Set with a sword at his neck, and Isis behind them reconciling. And this is a law of three image of Horus, the active force, spirit, the desire to grow, to do our inner work, Set, the instinctual drives of wanting to just fuck and eat and be liked, and then Isis is reconciling the two. And what that means, and what the point of my book is really about, is real inner work is not about conquering or killing Set, nor about just indulging in Set. It's about putting Set in his right place. And that law of three image is kind of the whole sense and sensibility of what Egypt represented.
Wow. This is for a lot of people who are into the Enneagram, who are just, knowing or aware of just the Enneagram of personality, and don't see that the Enneagram symbol itself is a really rich history of representing inner work in so many ways. And, that symbol has been applied to so many things. And so I guess Egypt is significant because that is the origin of the foundation of what the Enneagram symbol is. Exactly. Those cosmic laws of three and laws of seven.
Exactly. It's, it's like what that Horus, Set, Isis trinity, that law of three, that reconciling Horus and Set. That is a metaphorical expression of what it means to do inner work, what it means to know your Enneagram type, and to try to be present with your instincts. Is that you're learning to and struggling with trying to be your higher self and be your animal self, and that they're not at odds with each other, that they're not at war. They need to be reconciled and find their proper relationship with one another. And one expression of this same image is in Christianity, which is Christ on Palm Sunday, which is 7 days before he has the Last Supper. Christ has to ride a donkey into the holy city. And the donkey was an animal of Set. It was an animal that represented animality and instinct and the body. And so Christ needs the body to get into the holy city, meaning to be a real human being, to fulfill his destiny. And the Christ principle in all of us needs that right relationship of Horus and Set, and that is accomplished through presence of Isis. So it's kind of like all of the civilization was different images, different metaphors, different poetry, different architecture to convey this.
So that's a lot of focus on that one subject.
Yeah. I mean, it's what is a human being?
It plugs into the Bhava Chakra stuff too, because when you're talking about Set and being chopped up, that really fits with the hell realm in the Bhava Chakra. And down there, right next to it, is the animals realm. And then in the other side is the sort of hungry craving, the hungry ghost, right? And then the Isis image really fits with the one that's straight up at the top, right above hell, which would be, it's kind of the gods realm, and it kind of does have a feminine charge, like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's a bunch more correlations in everything you said. We need to do a session together on that.
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, part of this Isis, Osiris, Horus story comes from something called the Ennead of Heliopolis. Heliopolis was one of the spiritual centers in where now the airport is in fucking Cairo, but it used to be this spiritual center. And there's different Enneads, meaning arrangements of 9 gods, because the Egyptians saw plurality as beginning with 3 and not 2. That 2 canceled itself out, and that anytime there's 2, there's 3 forces, meaning there's me and you, and then there's our relationship. So they saw 9 meaning completion. And I think, with some caveats and explanations, I think that the Ennead of Heliopolis may have a lot to do with the origins of the Enneagram. And my personal take is that if you're familiar with Gurdjieff and you're familiar with the ray of creation, something I came upon is I think that the Ennead of Heliopolis is also the ray of creation, but that's like a very esoteric kind of thing, but just for nerds out there. So I don't know, like, did I answer your question, David, at all?
Well, I'm asking a question that can't be actually answered in a certain sense, because I'm asking you to try to convey sort of your own experience of the resonance of this stuff in a almost like a body level of just the obviousness that it's real. You know what I mean? That the whole symbology, the place, the architecture, the energy is actually really lighting up your switchboard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the two places that I think speak most that are obviously next to the Great Pyramid, and then there's a tomb called the Tomb of Ramses VI, which is just the most stunning artwork in, I think, human history. So, like with the pyramid, you know, some things about the pyramid historically, like we've all been taught that the pyramids were tombs for egotistical kings made by slave labor. And I'm not somebody that like can retain numbers and figures off the top of my head very well, but I would recommend to everybody to watch a documentary that you can find on YouTube. It's a French documentary called Revelation of the Pyramids, and it is just based on the mathematics and the measurements of the pyramid. Just the math and just trying to understand it without the cosmology, without all the significance. You know, when you're near the pyramid is obviously a holy place. And in Catholicism, in Islam, you know, it's very common for people to be buried in churches and cathedrals and mosques because they're holy places. There were no bodies found within the pyramids, and there's no mention of how they're made in all of Egypt. Like, there is a lot of bullshit theories out there about how the pyramids were made, and I was actually curious about whether or not, like, granite is a big deal in Egypt, and it comes only from Aswan, which is like 600 kilometers south of Giza. And supposedly, they had enormous amounts of boats taking huge, like 70-ton blocks of granite all the way from Aswan up to, you know, Memphis, Cairo area. And I Googled to see if anybody had found any of these enormous blocks that might have like sunk, like you'd imagine, because there's cataracts and stuff like this, that like be pretty fucking amazing if no giant granite blocks had sunk to the bottom of the Nile, or there's no accidents or anything like that. And the Nile's changed course, and there's like silt and stuff like this, but none I could find. But what I was amazed to find was like people very, very confidently saying, you know, like, well, how were the pyramids made? And people responding like, oh, well, if you have a bunch of guys and a bunch of rope and you have a big ramp, and it's like,
no,
It's so simple.
it's so
Obviously.
amazing how people like, just like part of what I was speaking to before of the way that you have to be in your centers to really appreciate Egypt, because when you're with objects like the pyramid, those kinds of weird fucking theories just don't make any fucking sense.
right,
Mhm.
right.
It just, you know, the pyramid is made of something like 60 million blocks made of, you know,
Oh my God.
all of them
So-
weigh tons.
So the truth is that they were resonating all three centers in their bodies and levitating the blocks and putting them in place.
No, it was aliens.
Part of what's so amazing is like we have no idea how they fucking did this.
Right.
Mhm.
We have no idea. Like the idea that they were just like, supposedly Egyptologists say that the pyramid had to be constructed in 20 years because it had to fit into the reign of
What?
Khufu. Yeah. There's no fucking way. And all these blocks,
Right.
like, it's not just they didn't just stack up limestone blocks on the outside. Like, they're all individually fitted, meaning they're all unique blocks.
They're different shapes or sizes. Yeah.
Different sizes. And
Yeah.
it's not just like what fits. They all fit. You know what I mean? They were all designed that way
Yeah.
to be earthquake proof. And the pyramid is the most astonishing production of human beings that anything human beings have produced. And
It
to be
makes you
next
go,
to it.
huh?
Huh?
It didn't even occur to me that the pyramids had to withstand like worldwide catastrophes.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
earthquakes and floods and hurricanes. Like it didn't even occur to me about that. That's crazy.
I guess the one thing that would be significant is just the magnitude of standing in front of something like that. Because,
Exactly.
you know, like seeing photos of things versus actually being there, and like everyone's seen pyramids, but you don't actually realize like this thing's fucking massive when you're standing in front of it, and it's like, oh shit, like how did they fucking get millions of blocks to fit together and stay there for thousands and thousands of years? How is that possible?
Right.
Mhm.
And to be inside it too, because inside it feels like you're in the future. You know, it's supposed to be at least 4,500 years old. I think it's much older.
It could
but-
be tens of thousands of years old, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the whole Sphinx redating a little bit more specifically. So, like, I think civilization is older than people say.
Right.
Like I said, with that Göbekli Tepe thing, like it's mainstream view that site in Turkey is from 9,500 BC. That's much older than anybody thought. People were doing settlements. Anybody was doing astronomical observation.
Right.
Anybody was doing farming. Anybody was doing monument building. And yet all those things are there. And that's right after the Younger Dryas Ice Age. So, you know, I think that why does the Sphinx have all that water weathering around it from rain? Probably because it was subjected to the Younger Dryas event.
Right.
Meaning it was there, and there's like repairs that the people in the Old Kingdom is like the old era when supposedly the pyramids and the Sphinx were built, but in that time they were making repairs on the Sphinx.
Briefly, can you describe the Younger Dryas?
Yeah, so Younger Dryas is like, it's kind of weird. There was like a big ice age, maybe like 20,000 years ago, and then there was a period of like slow warming for about 10,000 years. And then at about 11,000 to 10,500 BC, there was a big cataclysm. And like scientists understood that there was some kind of cataclysm that like changed the environment, you know, in that era, but they didn't know what it was. And then they found craters for a comet strike that hit like North America and Greenland. And basically, you know, comets hitting glaciers on ice caps and instantly vaporizing them, causing
Oh my God.
massive flooding. And so, you know, like when you see in like natural history museums, mastodons, you know, corpses or whatever that like, or hear about like, mastodons that were just like smushed into something and like all the contents of their stomach are still, you know, able to be found and all that kind of shit. That was like a Younger Dryas, like caused massive flooding. And the Finger Lakes in upstate New York are like a result, and the Badlands in like Wyoming, I think, and
The
like
Grand
South
Canyon.
Dakota.
I don't know
the
about
Badlands are in South Dakota.
Yeah, okay, South Dakota, yeah. Anyway, it changed the climate because they think it was a comet hit from there's a meteor stream that we hit 2 times a year called the Taurid meteor stream because looks like it comes from the constellation Taurus. And something big was in there, and it hit us in multiple spots. And you know, basically, all that melting ice got into the Gulf Stream, and it froze it. And maybe it didn't like freeze all the water, but it like stopped the distribution of heat, which plunged us into a 1,000-year-long ice age. They think what happened was another piece of this same comet fragment hit the ocean and somehow dispelled or the whatever was going on, or like charged up the Gulf Stream again and started a period of warm weather. And that era, that Younger Dryas event is what it's called. Younger Dryas is what stripped the Sahara of grassland. That's what made it desert.
Yep.
So it was a huge event, and some people like Graham Hancock, like John Anthony West, speculate that there was a global civilization of some kind that was very different from ours, but that there was some global civilization that was wiped out. And, you know, you could call this Atlantis or whatever, but instead of it being like a continent, it was like a global civilization. And there's, you know, places like Easter Island and Machu Picchu and other places in Peru, and I'm blanking on other places, but there's all these like megalithic sites across the planet that don't seem to make any fucking sense. And tales all over the planet of, you know, that there was at one point these like civilizing forces that taught people how to have civilization, how to start their civilization across the world. So that's like what the conquistadors took advantage of when they slaughtered the Aztecs, is that the Aztecs thought, oh, these are Quetzalcoatl. This is our god returning, who gave us this, and on their ships and stuff like this. And so they, there's this mythology across the world that there was a giant cataclysm of some kind, and that the world restarted, and it was that there were some people who understood spiritual and also scientific matters that helped restart things. If that makes sense.
Doesn't Graham Hancock go as far? I mean, isn't he saying that this advanced civilization could be as old as 100,000 or 150,000 years old?
I don't know what he's currently saying, but I know that like 10,500 BC is like right before the Ice Age is probably like when this stuff was going. I've heard him. I don't know if it's him or a researcher he was working with, looking at basically like a giant a pyramid that's like been buried over a long period of time in Indonesia, and taking core samples, and it looks like it's between 20 and 30,000 years old.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Who knows how far back it could go, but the idea that our civilization is a legacy is a pretty old idea, and it's one that is very humbling. And at first people go, oh, that's fucking stupid and crazy, and then you're in a pyramid, and the pyramid was supposedly made at the beginning of Egyptian civilization, and yet it's far more advanced than anything later in Egypt. Right. Ancient Egyptian civilization had a 3,000 year that we know of, 3,000 year arc, and its best architecture, its biggest blocks, its most sophisticated, heaviest. So there's a place called the Osirian, which is one of my favorite places. It has blocks that are 100 tons. 100-ton blocks.
Jesus.
Of granite, solid granite.
I can't even picture how much that is.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. And these old sites, the Sphinx Valley Temple that I mentioned, that was like the blocks that were used from quarrying around the Sphinx. Some of these are like 30-ton blocks. These are the biggest blocks. The most impressive construction is the oldest.
30 tons. That's 60,000 pounds.
60,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just insane numbers. I mean, not only that, like to build the pyramid, they had to level the Giza plateau. Had to level it, and then set these enormous, like, kind of like, not like a full-on tractor trailer, but like one of those kind of mid-sized tractor trailer trucks, like that kind of background. Those are the blocks that they set at the base of the pyramid, like over the Giza plateau, to even things out for the pyramid to be built on top of.
It's reminding me of a conversation on another podcast about them studying the alien crafts in Area 51, the military, and they apparently, part of the technology is they actually can control gravity, and that's from alien, technology. But you can imagine, this brings in the aliens, but I mean, you can imagine if you are from a civilization that, understands how to master, laws of physics and things like that in terms of, I don't know, controlling or manipulating. There had to be something like that, some kind of control of gravity.
I mean, it seems like we lost something, or we understood something, because I mean, you get actually in the physical presence of these things, and it's just like the idea that they made that they used copper chisels to level an entire plateau to build a pyramid on, and then they, in the Great Pyramid, there's a pit which goes, I can't remember how many meters down into the solid bedrock, but it's in these. It is a meter by meter long shaft that goes down, so you have to really like crawl to get down there, and it is quite deep. And there's this pit that's been hollowed out, and it was not built. It was hollowed out, but it's like somehow they had to build this very precise, completely precise shaft deep into the bedrock with just copper tools, and like somehow seeing down there, and then hollow out this room, not build it, but hollow out an enormous room, and then bring all the rubble and stuff back up through this long fucking shaft. Like it's stuff that just seems like it defies any kind of normal physical explanation. Like, I don't think it was aliens, of course, but I have no idea whatever it was, it seems like it would require a kind of extraordinarily cultivated quality of attention. And go watch that documentary Revelation of the Pyramids, and its alignment to true north is more precise than almost anything that we can do today. Even the idea that they hauled some of these like 70-ton granite blocks up into where what's called the King's Chamber would be, that they'd have to have some kind of dirt ramp. Like the idea just gets more and more absurd as you start thinking it through in a more practical way, because that dirt ramp would have to be like 2 miles long.
So it's like modern day architects and scientists can't recreate the pyramid.
No. And in that documentary, they show that various attempts by modern people to like make a sincere effort to do that shit, and it doesn't work. And there's more than the 3 pyramids. There's a bunch of pyramids, and the explanations for them are like absurd and hilarious. But like there's one called the Bent Pyramid in an area called Dashur. Oh, by the way, the pyramids were totally fucking smooth on the outside. They had casing stones, so they like would shine like reflective surfaces. And so
They do now?
no, they used to.
Oh, okay.
But like the middle pyramid of so-called Khafre has at the top, it's got like a little casing stones at the top, like almost like the snow on top of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Oh, so that's what that is.
perfectly smooth all the way down, but earthquakes and stuff. But there's this bent pyramid, and it's at like a I think it's at a 54-degree angle, and then midway through it becomes like a 64-degree angle or something like this. And the explanation is that the pharaoh that supposedly made these, like, the architect like misunderstood how steep it was and then just corrected midway through. And that this is also the like second of 3 pyramids he made that he couldn't decide which one he wanted to be buried in, and then ended up being buried in none of them. It's like bullshit. It's like obviously that this bent pyramid was constructed intentionally to be bent. And so there's a lot of pyramids, and what you see is that the later pyramids are all smaller and they all collapse, and they like a lot of them look like piles of dirt, piles of rubble, because they lost the ability to do it. Somehow they lost the ability.
Wow.
So yeah, this civilization started at its peak architecture, started at its peak religion, started at its peak incomplete language, its most sophisticated art, its capacity to work with huge projects. Its history is a 3,000-year decline, which doesn't make any sense.
So something just got lost in a big way.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, being next to a pyramid, you feel like you're next to a human-made mountain. It has such a presence and such a gravity and such a profundity and mystery that it's like you feel a sense of wonder and like, what was the motivation for making this thing?
Because it took like decades to make. So, I mean, what in our time has that level of long-term intentionality towards something, like gesturing towards something beyond? Like that doesn't really happen anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like very little evidence that, so with the Sphinx, one piece of evidence is very interesting about the dating of the Sphinx is that it's called a stela, and there's this inventory stela that was from like a later era, but it was a copy of an earlier record. And it's talking about how, I think, Khafre or Khufu, who were supposedly the 2 pharaohs that made the middle pyramid and the Great Pyramid, I think it was Khufu talking about needing to make a temple next to the Sphinx, which is like his son is the one that Egyptologists say built the Sphinx. So the idea is that Khafre supposedly built the Sphinx, but his father Khufu is saying, "Oh, I built a temple next to the Sphinx," meaning that the Sphinx is already there.
Mm-hmm.
In the pyramid, there's like a graffiti in a top chamber, or like a chamber above the King's Chamber that has like the name of Khufu or something, and it could have just been like they were fixing something up or something. But the evidence of who built them and why they're attributed to the times they're attributed to is very, very faint and very circumstantial. And what's pretty amazing is that the pyramids represent specific stars on the earth. The pyramids are named after stars, and so like what the pyramids are 3 pyramids in a row, like what stars are 3 in a row?
Orion.
Right. And for them, for the Egyptians, it represented Osiris. And so, it's this area of the sky. There's like a triangle shape of the sky where the sun passes through between the equinox and the summer solstice. And that was a representation of what they called the duat, which is talked about as the underworld, but it's not like after death. Like the so-called Book of the Dead starts with, this is a book for people on the earth, meaning it's not for the dead. But Egyptologists like, this is for dead people. But this realm of transformation, like again, taking the sun as a metaphor for the human soul, passes through this death and rebirth area that's represented by certain stars. And so these stars of this duat are represented on the earth. So like I was saying before, that there's this sense of weaving metaphor and image about the divine action in life everywhere, that the pyramids and the landscape of Egypt itself are a representation of these spiritual principles. And so to be a civilization where that mattered so much that you'd put in the time and energy and effort and everything else that goes with to make this extremely mysterious and powerful and beautiful monument like the pyramid is incredible. And it's beyond what we can comprehend.
Wow. So where do people sign up to go to Egypt?
Yeah, sign me up.
If you're interested in going to Egypt, I would say, email me through my website. I kind of want to get a gauge of who'd be willing to go. And, this would not be a cheap trip. Like the current trip that is the 3-week one is very expensive, and it's very luxurious. And we went down a private boat on the Nile and visited all these temples. I would want a much more roughing it, like more like an intensive inner work retreat where I would probably start it by having several classes ahead of time, like online, that would be introducing certain practices and introducing certain, kind of getting historical information about Egypt so you can appreciate it while you're there without me having to blab about it. But I would have it sort of set up in a very intentional way. And I want to get a gauge of who would be willing and interested to actually come, because a lot of people go, oh, that sounds cool, but to commit I don't know, between $2,000 to $4,000, which I know is expensive as fuck, but the planet is dying, and we're not, we're going to die in the water resource wars. And
So we need to have the metaphysical understanding to carry on the civilization, and
Exactly.
it'll begin with this group.
exactly.
The one thing this
The new world.
Yes.
the one thing this conversation kind of reminds me of is like how there are scientists out there right now who are trying to figure out how to leave markers on the land so that people know that it's like nuclear waste is there, because it's going to outlive our civilization, which is fucking depressing. Like, I'm not saying that's what Egypt was doing, but it's just interesting to watch these scientists be like, okay, well, this symbol isn't going to mean what it means now in 300,000 years. How are we going to do this? So it's really interesting that, like, I really wonder what they were meaning to leave, and we're just completely missing it.
Well, I mean, I think you're dead on, Nancy, is that it's not about nuclear waste, but
No, absolutely.
that their civilization understood something what was real. But I suspect maybe that they understood that their civilization was ending. Like maybe they had the capacity to see the comet thing coming. Maybe.
Mhm.
I mean, again, I can't recommend that documentary enough because it'll blow your mind. Revelation of the Pyramids. But I think that they were leaving like a monument to something that was supposed to, if you had the eyes to see, meaning if you're just a little bit curious and you just looked at the math, you looked at just what it represents, you just investigated and put some attention on it instead of just absorbing whatever the culture says it's supposed to be, that you could figure out, like Schwaller de Lubitz, from just the math and the metaphor, that there was something it was gesturing toward that was not like a fixed thing, like this is nuclear waste or this is special, but a kind of like a symbol like the Enneagram that just unfolds in meaning and meaning and meaning and meaning. A little bit of a sidetrack, but like one of the central images of Egypt was the primeval mound, meaning the something coming from the nothing, like kind of like a Big Bang idea. In Christianity, it's kind of like the logos, or in the beginning was the word. And in some like esoteric Christianity and Neoplatonic roots of esoteric Christianity, the word is almost represented, the logos is represented as a trinity. And I think that's the pyramid represents that. And so it's this primeval, this mound emerging out of the waters of chaos, out of the nothing, out of the void, to give rise to all form and phenomenon. And so, the Giza Plateau was arranged as a kind, not just as this potent symbol, but also as a kind of clock. The Sphinx is looking due east, and it is a lion body. There's a lot.
Sundial.
Yeah. So it's very likely that it is an equinoctial marker because it is looking due east. And the last time the sun, we're currently in the age of Pisces, so meaning that the equinox happens when we're in Pisces and it's moving into Aquarius because of this 26,000 year cycle called precession equinoxes. But the last time that the sun rose against the constellation of Leo on the equinox was 10,500 BC. And so, it's as above, so below, that it is rising, and there's an image of Leo on the ground as it is in the sky. And so it's like when heaven and earth were reflections of each other. This is also when the Milky Way was such that it was like a mirror image of the Nile. The Nile represents the Milky Way for the Egyptians. And so, these days they're at a cross, like they're out of sync, but in this, what's called Zep Tepi, the first time, 10,500 BC, they were mirrors of each other. And it was sort of this idea that heaven and earth were in alignment, that they become out of alignment. And so it's the role of the human being to develop its consciousness, to be a active weaver of the human material world and the divine world. And this is an idea that goes through Christianity, it goes through Islam and Sufism, it goes through Gurdjieff, it goes through Neoplatonism. It's this idea that human beings have, through their inner work, have a role to play in the cosmic functioning.
And going back to Leo, of course, is the lion, and isn't the Sphinx a lion with a human head?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that lion human head represents like the axes of Leo and Aquarius, which are opposite each other. When you go to like museums and see like Sumerian stuff, they've got like a bunch of bull, eagle,
right,
combinations.
Taurus.
It's Scorpio Taurus axis.
Yeah, it's pretty cool in the sense that the Enneagram itself is a mysterious thing that we're all little bit by bit uncovering, and you can't learn or really uncover the Enneagram without like real intention. And it's like Egypt is this giant representation of inner work in the way that you see the pyramids. It's like, yeah, those are giant, really impressive monuments, but they represent so much, and you have to intentionally go out there and not just be in awe of it, but try to figure out what it means. And people have been doing that for centuries. And so in a way, it's kind of like the last fucking boss in the game of like inner work. And like, this is what else could represent inner work on the grandest scale more than these giant fucking pyramids that no one understands, that you could spend your whole life trying to uncover like what they understood about inner life. And so yeah, it's one of those things that like I was like, man, at one point in my life I'm gonna get into Egypt, but it seems like the final fucking obstacle.
Yes.
It does kind of seem like that. And it's interesting that like no matter what culture you come from or like what religion or who you are or where you are in the world, everybody finds them intriguing. Like no one's like, oh yeah, the pyramids, fuck them.
Yeah, and it's cool that, it's mysterious and it's like it invites you to see what's beyond what it appears to be. And just like the Enneagram symbol itself, like which if, assuming that the Enneagram originates from that, like those cosmic laws have always been there. And it's just like someone discovering that because they were also a seeker of these universal truths. And so all of us who are studying the Enneagram, maybe we're looking at it from personality, but that there's so much more beyond these fucking descriptions and so many cosmic laws that can that we don't understand. And if you're like trying to understand personality, like there's so much more to go. And then Egypt kind of represents like this is like the final fucking thing you could ever get.
I mean, it blows your mind, and it makes you be like, I don't know anything actually.
Yes.
It speaks to your heart.
Right.
You're moved by it. You're like in awe. The architecture is, the beauty, the art. It is just overpowering. It just moves your heart, and it touches your heart in a way that's like, this is what's really important. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
what this meant, but
Mhm.
some people put their entire civilization toward something that was more meaningful than, like, what do we have, shopping malls and banks, like
Right.
like this, something
Capitalism.
mattered deeply.
Mhm.
And then lastly, there's just the body impression of just like, I'm in a pyramid. Like, I'm feeling in my body the way this architecture, the way these temples, the way things are making me feel. It's like a body-based sense of substance and power. And it's just, you start like trying to slide a credit card between the fucking blocks in certain places, and you can't do it because it's so precisely laid, like, laser precision. And you're just like, that sense of like, what the fuck keeps coming back and coming back and coming back, and like,
That's got to be humbling too, because I think sometimes people might listen to us and think that we're arrogant or whatever. I think the more you learn about anything, the more you realize how little you actually fucking know. And so just the experience, I would imagine, of facing something like the pyramids and realizing that there's so much to learn about, so much that was lost in order to make something like this happen.
Mhm.
That inner work is, all these series of experiences of being humbled and realizing like you're just like scratching the fucking surface of what you could understand about what it means to be human.
right, exactly. Some people know of the Gurdjieff movements, and that when you're doing a Gurdjieff movement, you have to be extremely present in all three centers, and that your attention is required to do these movements. Like, you can't phone it in, and you have to be really coordinated with other people. And you can the product of the movement is like, you can do the movement, but it's not really like doing it is kind of not the point. The point is the effort. But what you see in Egypt was some results, physical results, in terms of incredible temples and incredible pyramids, incredible art that was like, the art itself, doing the art was a practice. It's that required a certain quality of attention and coordination that we cannot fathom, and it turned into a tangible thing. It's not just, oh, that's a great philosophy. It turned into tangible things that you can feel the power of, and you can feel like to come to terms and to imagine what kind of efforts were required. It's like, this is the result. It's like, you're inside the thing.
Yeah.
Beyond whatever technology it could have required. It also, no matter how advanced the technology could have been or whatever we lost, it required most of all attention.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it starts to make you go, holy fuck. Like, if people were willing to make a collective effort for something like this, what the fuck am I giving my attention to?
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah. I mean, I know I'm saying a lot quickly to like throw a bunch out there because it's a whole huge topic, but it's something I just love so much, and I love to take people and show them and do my best to help them, open to what Egypt could represent for them. And I've known so many people that that have just been completely fallen in love with Egypt. I have that friend Denise I mentioned. She's like a type 2 with a 3-wing, like a therapist in Iowa. She went to Egypt she went to Egypt and had such profound experiences, and people do have spiritual experiences, that she is now nearly like, fluent is not quite the right term, but like, she really knows and can read hieroglyphics.
Wow.
And she doesn't just like, it's not just like translating like Spanish to English or something. You ever seen the movie Arrival?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like aliens arrive on Earth, and this linguist has to figure out their language, but in figuring out their language, it like alters her sense of perception and even time.
Yeah.
I think hieroglyphs, to really understand them, are like that, because they're these images that are, you could think of hieroglyphs as like acronyms or abbreviations. And so like, open them up is to like bring your mind into all these different realms. And so one of the difficulties of talking about Egypt in a succinct way is that everything connects to everything else.
Everything's like a seed that
Right.
turns into more stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
So if we go on this trip with you, one of the added bonuses is you're guaranteeing that we'll be able to levitate 30,000-pound blocks, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will
Expect
leave with the
nothing.
knowledge of how to create our own pyramids.
Well, you know, I mean, and I think that, like, you know, talking about this like masonry as being a practice, right? Like, I think that's where the Freemasons, like, that was the idea behind the Freemasons and a lot of medieval guilds, that like a lot of guilds started in Egypt, actually, like metallurgy and stuff. So like in alchemy and all this shit. So
Yep.
like there is something there that throughout centuries people have recognized
Right.
as being something important, but sometimes getting close, sometimes really off the mark. But it's like whatever the Masons became, I don't know, but what they started as was understanding that the practice of building was building something outer, but it was also building the inner life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could do a whole Masons fucking things.
Yeah, I definitely do want to go to Egypt with you. I mean, it completely depends on like my financial status when you go, but
Yeah,
Supposed
it's
to just abandon everything that you've ever wanted to do.
well, considering I've been working to be in the school for 2 years, I think I'll pass on that. Thank
Oh.
you.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to bring
Little
y'all to Egypt, and you know, I don't know. I can show you the good stuff, and then shut the fuck up for the things that you know you need to have the experience of.
What an epic zone would that fucking
Yeah.
be?
Oh, I know.
Oh my
absolutely.
God.
I mean, I was thinking
Y'all
like
would never shut up about it.
Yeah.
no, it's wild. I mean, Egypt itself, just as a modern country, is great, and then the addition of just like this fucking insane shit that you can. One of the things is like for example, you go to like Old Kingdom tombs. Old Kingdom meaning like the age of the pyramid builders, supposedly, and you'll see like these scenes in like tombs of like catching birds in a clap net, and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of boring. Why would you put that in a tomb? Like, did they think that the soul was going to come back and admire the dumb art, you know?
Yeah.
But what you see later is in New Kingdom, 1,000 years later, God's doing the same actions, and the idea was that these actions, these mundane events, were seen as metaphors of inner work and divine operation. And so, you know, you wouldn't normally perceive that unless you're with a fucking nerd like myself. You know, there's like all these little kind of things where it's like, oh, why are they just? There's a whole thing where it's like they're punishing in a tomb. They have these images of people who avoided paying tax being punished, and I was like what? That's a fucking weird thing to put in a tomb. And what I started and I don't know if this is true or not, but my speculation is that Gurdjieff talked about the need to pay the debt of our existence through inner work. That our purpose in life was to do a certain amount of inner work to generate a certain amount of energy, and that's a whole topic I can get into. But that if we don't pay that debt of our existence, if we don't produce enough energy, we don't do enough inner work, that basically our soul gets recycled and turned into fertilizer. Basically, it's like
Oh God.
I think that these images as the punished tax avoiders is to say that people who did not pay the debt of their existence. And so it's like something that can seem kind of mundane and boring and quaint turns into
A metaphor.
yes, something that unlocks the heart. It shifts the heart's sense of what really matters.
Yeah, it's crazy that there's a whole civilization that cared about inner work. That in itself is
Right.
like wow. But yeah, we
Right.
should wrap up.
Yeah, if people, if listeners have questions or something, maybe we could do future stuff. Ask, you know, you can send a submission to our love line, but it's a topic I love to talk about, and you know, I would love if people, you know, showed me if they were interested in undertaking one of these trips, and so I could start actually putting some things together to see what that would look like, and if that'd be possible to bring people.
And also I think, you know, sort of like with astrology is such a vast topic that it's you kind of have to pick a specific angle, and we could do an episode on it. I think it'd be cool to just revisit Egypt, but if somebody has a specific question, something that they'd like to cover, so it can, be hyper focused, we can like reoccurrently do, bring back Egypt as a topic. All right.
All right.
Great.
Later, y'all.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks.
It's